So like everything I just said is like completely irrelevant if your garments don't have.
Welcome to Make Good Fashion, the podcast that's all about starting, launching, and growing impactful fashion brands. I'm your host, Jasmine Rennie. Before I start today's episode, I have a very special announcement, so listen up. And that announcement is that the Make Good Fashion shop is now live. So what do we have in the Make Good Fashion shop? Well, I'm glad you asked, friend, because we have all the things. We're talking a sourcing directory of over 200 fashion industry manufacturers, vendors, and suppliers that you can access in one click. We also have cost sheets that will help you calculate the true cost of your garments and tell you exactly how much to price them for. We also have budgets so that you can keep all your finances in orders and so much more. So make sure to head over to makegoodfashion.com/shop. I'm also going to include a link in the show notes along with a promo code that you can use to get 15% off of your first purchase. You guys, these templates are essential and things that every fashion business should have. So make sure to head over to the Make Good Fashion shop so that you can tap in and get yours today. Hey friends, welcome back to the Make Good Fashion podcast. So today's episode's really special because I get to interview one of my really good friends of 20 years, Dom Gomez. Now, it feels weird to even say that I've known someone for 20 years, but it's true. Me and Dom attended middle school together and somehow our paths aligned, and we both found ourselves working in the fashion industry. Dom is now a product developer at Citizens of Humanity, and he knows a thing or two about what it takes to make a great product. So I wanted to have Dom on the podcast to talk a little bit about the product development process and all the ingredients that go into making a winning product. So without further ado, here's my interview with my friend, Dom Gomez. Oh, wow. Look who we have here. If anybody knew how hard it was to get you on my podcast, they just wouldn't believe all the things that I had to do. Thanks for being on the podcast, Dom. Thanks for
Uh,
finally getting it together and joining us.
that's a warm welcome. Thank you for having me. I love it here.
Okay, Dom. So why don't you start by telling me a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the fashion industry and who inspired you to be in the fashion industry?
So I ended up in fashion probably, I would say through a little bit throughout high school, junior high. I think I've always been kind of like attracted to apparel, to clothing in general.
Yeah.
I grew up
Okay,
with,
hold on. I have to stop you right there. A
yeah,
little bit of a backstory for those of you who are listening. Me and Dom met in middle school in seventh grade. We are now an undisclosed age that I will not speak, but we
thank
are
you
into our
kindly.
30s. But it's funny because I remember you because of your fashion as well in middle school.
Yeah.
I remember you always had like the freshest shoes, like the new K Swiss. Like I bought K Swiss
Oh,
because you had K
you're good.
Swiss.
You're
I
gonna
don't know if
date
I
me
ever
by
told
saying
you
case
that,
this.
but
No,
like I
no.
bought them because you had them and I thought they looked so cool in middle school. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I just had to like cut in right there to just give people a little background of
You're gonna date both you and I both by
with
saying
the K
K-Swiss. Like,
Swiss.
yeah, K-Swiss. Like a lot of people don't know about the
I know
K-Swiss.
these
Like,
kids don't know
yeah,
anything about K
yeah,
Swiss.
that you definitely dated us with that. So fast forward through that era of high school, I somehow bring myself to end up in Japan. How I got to Japan is like a story in its own. But I bring myself to end up in Japan, living in Japan, just outside of Tokyo. And so I realized while I'm there, like I've come across, and I used to go into Shibuya and into Harajuku and into these various places around Japan, like on a like a couple times a night during the weekdays, running around the streets and kind of like very attracted to like the culture
Mm.
of Tokyo, the culture of people, and like the art of like these subgroups in Tokyo, which I wouldn't say they're like almost like these cliques of personalities, and when it kind of sounds like more so these cliques of expression, like these groups of expressions of people like who just like express themselves like mostly through apparel. And the most obvious one is, what's the word? Like
I know
in
what you're talking
Harajuku.
about.
Yeah, like like it's like a lot of cosplay,
I
right?
know
Like
what you're
what's I
talking
forget the
about. I
word.
can't think of the word either.
I'm forgetting the word, but like that's the most obvious one when people think of like expression through like through clothing. But that's it's very cosplay. It's very much
Like the
like
Harajuku girls.
yeah, yeah, and it's very much like popularized, like increase in popularity like over the last so ever however many years, right? Since I lived there. But like what I was drawn to was like more so what brought me back to like childhood. And these were like these kids and like adults even that like there was like adults that like still dressed how I dressed when I used to skate like in eighth grade, but like
Mm.
as adults and they were like super cool. And then there were like adults that had like crazy shoes on and like cool denim. And then there was like groups of like people who were like dressed like as if and they were in like a hip hop video and like
Yeah.
but this was like their everyday life. Like this was how they dressed every single day. Like they weren't dressing this way for anything. Like this is how they lived their life. Like you would walk into a shop and like you would see one like the person in the shop, like if he were like, you know, and I'll use like he could be listening to like Dr. Dre or something. Cause like one thing about Japan and one thing that I love, you know, being from California is like a lot of people in Japan like super love California and like lifestyle, like surf lifestyle, like hip hop, and they're just very connected to California, which I thought was always cool. So anyway, while living there, I kind of like fell in love with all of these different like groups of people and how they like express themselves, and not necessarily through like times of like what was cool at the moment, like that they just kind of like lived that way. So I kind of like fell in love with that. So along the time that I'm living there, I somehow got connected with you again.
Mia?
Yeah, you. Yeah. So I can't say how we got connected, but somehow we got connected and somehow you were in Japan. And I remember you telling me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is how like when I think about like like a turning moment for me. I remember you telling me like, oh yeah, like you know, like we come here for work or like you know I would come here like my coworkers or in or Japanese, etc.
Yeah.
And like
So at the
something was
time, I
very
was working at a company that was a Japanese-based company, and
right.
I don't know if you remember, but we had an office out in Japan. So I was like
Yeah.
meeting with
So
some of my coworkers that were based in Japan office and stuff like that.
right. And so I when I think about that time and when I tell this because I feel like I've mentioned this before because it's like a turning point for me. But when I tell this, I'm like, yeah, like the only thing that could cross my mind is like, what do you do or what do you have to do? And this is like kind of more, it says more about like you and then it says a little bit about me and how much I like loved being in Japan. But I was like, what do you have to do that you can come just like work out here? And like how do I do it? And
Mm.
how do I get to just come out here and be here and kind of like experience this and enjoy this for work? Because that's what it seemed like. It may not have been like your case, right? I could be glamorizing it a little more than what it really was, right? But like at the time, I was like naive to it and I didn't know anything about fashion. It was more so like, how do I do that? How do I come out here
Mm.
and be here for work? Because I love it here. I love the
Yeah.
people and I love the culture and I love lifestyle. So yeah, that was like I guess that was my big moment of when I was like, oh, okay, like whatever it is, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
love that story. Okay, so
yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about the company that you work for and your role there as a product developer?
So I work for Citizens of Humanity. I've been there a couple years, like going on like 4 years plus or minus a couple months. So just under 5 years actually.
And for the
Um,
people who don't know, what does Citizens of Humanity produce?
oh, so So Citizens of Humanity's been around for since early 2000 and primarily it's a denim company. So premium denim brand, sorry. And within Citizens of Humanity, there's a couple brands under the Citizens umbrella that operate. So there's A Goldie, there's Gold Sign, there's Citizens of Humanity, and then there's Citizens of Humanity Men's. So there's a couple brands under the umbrella of Citizens. They're all completely separate brands, which is really cool. And I work on our A Goldie and Gold Sign team.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
so what is your day to day as a product developer for a company like this look like? Like, walk me through like what that looks like. What are you exactly doing?
You can see I'm like cheesing ear to ear.
Why do you, is it
Um,
because you love your job so much? Or are you just
because
like traumatized at the work that you have to go back and do on Monday?
it's all trauma. Um, no, no. Honestly, it's I like instantly cheat because like you said day to day.
And it's
And
different every single day.
so my first, yeah, exactly. Like there's and that is like not something that everyone kind of thrives for or like kind of like yearns towards, but it's something that I love coming from someone who like did do something at a certain point in their life at like every day and it was really consistent and it was kind of
Yeah.
like the same thing.
Dane.
Yeah, it was very mundane. And like to do development and I can't say development is the same way everywhere, right? Like, but on my day to day with the people that I get to work alongside, it's so fun. I always say that. Like, it's like one of the funnest things ever because it's not the same. And it's like anything else where it's like you know there's a lot of trial and error and problem solving and like and learning as you go in the sense of like trying to push the limit and like do new things on a daily basis, not new things but like trying to improve things, how we do things and how we're developing product and how we're making things and improve the product, even in the smallest way, and even starting at the improving the product like not in product form and like in fabric form, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, no day is the same, but a lot of what I do is touching product on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those that are not super familiar with the role of a product developer, how would you describe the process and like their role within a fashion brand? So we know a lot of people know fashion designers, that's like the primary thing that we think of. But like how does a product developer like fit into that scenario and like yeah, like what if you could summarize the role and the responsibilities, like what does that look like?
So I would say, in short, you work alongside your design team, and you take conceptualized ideas and you turn them into product, and it could be products from apparel. There's home developers. There's actual product developers that develop like hard goods and like things like that. And it's basically working alongside someone who's conceptualizing an idea and a product, and you kind of taking and providing all the ingredients to kind of like bring it to life
Yeah.
and bring it to life and pass it on to either a person or a division or someone else who can take it and scale it with as little as error as possible. So when I say like so between design development, and I don't know if you've touched on this yet or if you will at some point, you have what is called production. And the bridge, typically what happens or like the interim in the timeline of process, your design team will design, your developers will develop, and your production team will then produce on whichever scale your business is, what you designed and produced and sold. So to be able to take a conceptualized idea and develop it and bring it to life with all the raw materials, what I like to call all the ingredients, right? Like
Hmm.
all of the pieces that
And
it
what
takes
does
to
that
kind of
look like? What could that be for like you do denim. So what
yeah.
are those raw materials?
So I think denim is like probably the, what we denim's probably one of the more complicated ones I would say
Hmm.
because there's so many more pieces involved in bringing it to a production stage, and it's also like why like to me I feel like denim is so special, it's so important because like so many people touch it, truly touch it like one jean before it's like brought to a store and it's like available for purchase. But it looks like basically you start with a sketch, right? A design team. From design team, they have, you have a fabric in mind, you have a denim in mind that you want to use. From denim, from that stage, it goes through a pattern maker. From a pattern maker, it goes to a cutter or someone or a machine or someone who's going to operate a machine to cut this sample garment, and so you can put it on a sewing machine. From there, it goes to a sewer. From this sewer, and what we call is raw denim, and it's kind of like this is something that's very popular in Japan. It's a finished jean, but denim, as you know, I mean, as you don't know, I don't know if you do or not. Like one of the cool things about denim is like it it ages over time, right?
Hmm.
Like vintage denim is that
Yeah.
way because it's it's lived a lot of life is what I say. Someone had to wear it to like bring it to that point, and like it has a lot of stories to tell. So denim in stores, brand new, needs to get to that 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 wide stage, what I would call it, like to living out all life, right? So to get to that stage too, and that's usually when people everyone likes different stages of denim, but like vintage denim, it's usually washed down, it looks a little worn, either it has damage, etc. So to get to that stage, it has to go through a laundry process. And sometimes it's automated, sometimes it's not, but that's another set of hands that it goes through. And then finally coming back through a finishing process. And I say all of that to say basically that entire process from that sketch all the way through to that finishing process all comes back through a developer's hand. So like every single one of those pieces a developer is involved in, and that's pretty much like a daily basis. So when you take that, and that's why I say denim's a little more complicated to use as an
It's more
example, because
steps, right?
there's a lot more steps in the process, and which when you have more steps, you have more room for error. When you have, you know, there's a lot more things that can go wrong
Yeah.
in all of those steps. So it takes a lot of hands to kind of like bring it to life and
Yeah.
do it efficiently and still kind of create beautiful product.
Yeah. So, in your role as a product developer and having your hands involved through this process, are you sourcing the materials? Are you working with the production team? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I honestly I work with everyone. So I source materials alongside my design team. I work with my production team on a daily basis. I work with my development team on a daily basis, like on across the entire company. I work with tech team, our technical design team on a daily basis. I'm like this with our pattern team on
Bet.
a daily basis. Yeah. So I think and not to say no one is more important than the other, but like I'm with our sample sewers on a daily basis. And I'm fortunate enough to have like all of these people in one building, which is like very rare, especially in today. And I mean, I'm sure you can talk towards that, but like in today, it's very rare to have all of these
Yeah.
people in one space. So, but I'm fortunate enough to kind of be in a position where everyone is in one space. And so I'm very much a like walk around and like go see someone. So I literally work with every single department on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
super special because you can,
yeah,
see the whole process through. And,
right,
if you have any questions or you need to get
right,
anything fixed or changed, you can do that instantly, which is so
yeah,
awesome because a lot of
yeah,
people, are developing and doing stuff overseas, which can
right,
elongate the process. And so having that
definitely.
easy access and connection is probably so helpful.
Yeah, and the communication is just part of also part of like being a developer is being a communicator.
Yeah, I bet.
So like the communication is just like being able to just kind of, and I wouldn't say it like to being able to like speak all the different languages, because everything is like it when you kind of work, when you work with a pattern maker or you're working with a sewer, like they speak each other's language, right? But that doesn't mean like the sewer is going to speak or your production team's language, because they're working on one piece and your production team's working on however many you have for an order. So being a developer and being able to work with all of the departments and communicate across all the departments is something that like takes a little bit of time to kind of work through and align with all the different departments, I guess I would say.
Okay, so you spoke about how you have to keep a lot of communication and,
Yeah.
with basically everyone in this production process and the process of developing the product. I know
Yeah.
that, as a product developer, as you said, you're also working with like vendors to source materials and components of the garment and things like that.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, for someone who's like starting their own company, first I want you to touch a little bit on how important it is to build relationships with your vendors and keep,
Yeah.
that communication. Um, let's start there.
So I think that, so that goes back to like me just kind of like briefly touching on like the communication and speaking the languages. And the reason I say that is because that's not just like I'm not talking to strangers every day. Like these are people that, it takes time to be able to speak the language and translate across the various departments, etc. And I look at that and if I were doing that with vendors and contractors and people who have 40 different people doing it with them on a daily basis. I think part of the relationship that you're building with these people is a relationship of like, because it's still business, right? Like if fashion is a business at the end of the day and they have a business, but part of the relationship is like building a trust with these people and allowing them to kind of like, they have to trust you and you have to trust them. And there's a lot of like transactional things that happen between, and it's the same thing and where I would work with various departments, right? But there's a lot of like transactional things that have to happen, and there's a lot of depending on you to come through with certain things, and the same way you depend on them. And I always consider that like just the relationship, and it's important to be able to trust that you'll come with your portion and they'll deliver with theirs. But it's definitely one of the most important things, and I again I immediately associate it with like trust. Like you wouldn't work with someone you don't trust. You wouldn't work with a vendor who you feel is like going to steal your product, right?
Yeah.
Or someone who's going to like, you wouldn't give product to someone who you don't think is going to like pay you for it. Like a lot of a lot of like payment and things in fashion is not like it's not always immediate. And so like a part of a relationship is like trusting that, everyone's going to do business accordingly and do it properly and kind of respectfully, I guess.
Okay. Also, staying along the lines of like, new designers who are venturing out, starting these new businesses, I think it can be so hard to like find the right vendors and like find suppliers to work with. Do you have any tips on how to go about doing that? How to find the right partners to source from, materials, and all of that for people in the fashion industry? I feel like, I don't know if you feel like this, but I think as a business owner myself, like, when I first stepped into the fashion industry, it just felt like, and it still feels like this, it's just you kind of grow and you learn, but just
Yeah.
felt like a lot of things were gate kept and it was very hard to like find what you needed.
I definitely felt that when I first came into the industry. Like even when I was in school, like it feels like it's very much like, you know, if you have a contact, like nobody really wants to share it.
Yeah, it's
For whatever
crazy.
reason, right? Like I never, even to this day, I still really don't understand. I think that one of my most important like some advice that it was given to me is like, and it goes back to like kind of relationships and trust is like good partners and good people that you want to start working with are like usually, and this is also like not even just like working with contractors and vendors and things like that, and like working with various people or like whether it be fabrics or trims or whatever it is. But like it's just in general, like when you network with people and people like can come back and say like, yo, Jasmine's like a very solid person, like she's good people. Like that goes a long way. And so I think that like early on, I feel like a lot of what like was being gate kept was like the like lack of like not having that network and not having people to like kind of vouch for you and kind of say like, yo, no, like he's good people or
Yeah,
she's a good person, like and they could be people that never worked with you, but just know that like you're an honest person and like it's just something that and you take what you do serious, right? Like it can be something as simple as that. Like you cannot really have anything to sit on, but I think just being a good person, like people can kind of feel that, and like just being a serious person, like people can
absolutely.
kind of like serious about what you want to do and like what it is that you're like going after. I think people can kind of like feel that through like just networking with you and like running into you. Like one of my first internships, I got standing in line at a bathroom, like
Wow,
at a coffee shop. So like,
that's
and
crazy.
and it just came from like it was just like it was like pretty genuine conversation, and that internship then opened up a couple more doors, and he was like the business over, he was the owner of like an apparel line, and he was like, hey, like and we just had a great conversation, and it opened up a couple of doors, and it didn't come from me being like, hey, like I want to, I'm in the industry, I want to do this. Like it was just us two having a conversation and both waiting in line to use the restroom.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think it's like those, again, those are things that you kind of like can just like fill people out, and like just people are just be genuine and be a good person. And I think like, of course, just being a good person is not going to get you your
Yeah.
connections you need, right? But I think that's a place to start.
Yeah, I love that you touch on being a good person, which nobody is a perfect person, but just
Right,
kindness,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Just leading with kindness. I think a lot of times I see new designers come out and there's this sense of entitlement sometimes where it's just like, they kind of expect things to be done a certain way for them or like,
yeah,
expect people to serve them in a certain way. But I
yeah.
think coming into it with humility and kindness and like, if you don't know a lot, like just being honest
Right.
about that. And I
Yeah,
think you'd be surprised to find that a lot more people are willing to help you because you
for
move in
sure.
humility. And also touching on what you said about just networking and things like that. I remember when I started out, I just had the roughest time finding a good production manager, and it was just so stressful. I I'm such a baby, and I would just like cry all the time because my production manager would like yell at me because I didn't know what I was doing. And just by like making friends with other designers in the industry, right?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah,
sometimes I think designers feel like it's like a competitive thing. And it's like, no, everyone has their own little niche, everyone's doing their own thing. And I think if you find the right friends and the right people, they can help you too.
yeah.
And so I remember, I had two friends who were also designers and they had found a production person that was super solid and connected me with
Yeah.
him. And that person like ended up being not only a production manager for my company, but also a great mentor to me and someone who
Right.
was very patient with me and introduced me to a lot of different vendors, a lot of different
Yeah.
people within the industry that could help me grow my brand. And honestly, my business would not be where it is today if I had not met him and if I had not, gone, you have to go through a couple bad frogs
Right.
to like
For
get to the
sure.
good ones. So I
For
also think
sure.
it's important like for new designers and, new business owners that are starting up in the fashion industry, don't get discouraged if you are, you know, just starting out and it feels like people are just like not treating you the best and you're not getting,
Right.
the best results. I think you have to just keep trying and keep connecting and networking and meeting the right people so you can get
Right.
connected with those vendors and partners that are going to be like lifelong connection. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that like I 100% agree with you in the terms of like you kind of got to go through the, and I'll use like my internships, like going through various internships, like I to like kind of figure out like, yeah, like isn't the, this one's not good, and I'm not
Hmm.
really feeling this one I like, what I was doing there, but like, I want to move forward, and like you kind of like navigate your way through. It's the same thing, like you kind of like navigate your way through whether it's like your intro into like as a new designer, your intro into the industry. I think i think part of what could kind of like fault people and kind of like halt their like catapult to like be successful and like not and network and just be a good person is like you said, like feeling that entitlement.
Yeah.
And that comes to me, that comes with like today's platform of like fashion and where fashion is like shown, like, right, like fashion is all over social,
Yeah.
and you can, and like things go viral and sell out so fast, and being able to see like that instant success kind of like, brings that entitlement, which I don't agree with it, but like, it's the fashion world we live in today. And I think that like, new designers see that, and if you are able to be successful, like I think this kind of like still it comes back to just being a good person, because successful or not, like you can be successful and still be a terrible person. So like there's plenty of people there that are like very, very well off, super successful. They're just not good people. There's nothing wrong with them, and like that's just who they are. But yeah, they're just not good people. So I think that being successful, being a good person, and just navigating the climate of like where fashion is at now, I think it's I don't know. I feel like it'll take you further and longer, and in the marathon of like just being a successful designer,
Yeah.
or if you're a developer, being a developer with like some longevity and keeping your legs under you, or if you work in production, like I think you really have to see like you have to see a long end goal if you work in production because it's like production is like, it's a constant like trial and error battle and like
Yeah,
there's I
totally.
mean it's with everything, not just production, but yeah, I just think it's the platform we have today in terms of like where fashion is at, that entitlement. It definitely can get the best of people.
Absolutely. But like you said,
Yeah.
kindness is something that's timeless. And I think that
But that's a bar.
don't steal that from me.
That's a
Yeah, I just
bar.
find that like you reap what you sow, right? So
For
you
sure.
you put good out, you get good in, and like I said, I think, just from my experience of treating people with respect and kindness and like being patient, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
because you have to be
For
patient in this
sure. Yeah.
industry. A lot of things can go
Oh my
wrong.
goodness.
And so,
Yeah,
like,
for
if one
sure.
thing goes wrong, don't, like, go off on your vendors or your suppliers or your manufacturing partners. Like, things happen. So, you have to be really patient
Very,
people and very merciful with people, but
very,
they will be like that with you back. And I think, building
yeah.
those relationships, they're going to have your back, even if
Right.
you're a new designer. And I think again, that's been one of the biggest things is like being new at this and like just feeling like you don't have that support or feeling like you can't figure things out.
And a lot of times you really like can't figure it out, and like you're a good person and you still can't figure it out, and like
Yeah.
there's no one to help you and figure it out. Like, and then you just kind of go through the motions of like trial and error, and I think that's also super important. Like
Yeah.
you could be a good person and still go through the trial and error. Like,
Oh, you're going to go through the
yeah,
trial and error
yeah,
regardless. But I think, like,
yeah,
again, being intentional about being good, also making relationships, all of
right,
that, like,
right,
because eventually you're gonna make enough connections and relationships where you can ask questions and you can, get referrals and you
yeah.
can, but the trial and error never stops. So
I mean, I ask
that's just
questions
wishful
every
thinking.
day. Like
Yeah.
I literally, this is, and that's again, like when I think we had asked, like, a day in the life, like part of the excitement that no day is the same is that like I am learning things every single day,
Yeah.
like that I didn't know yesterday. Like, not because like something new crazy happens that puts me in a position to learn something new. It's just like just through conversation of like working through something or like
Yeah.
trying to figure something out or working through a new fabrication or like trying to blend things that like it's again nothing new under the sun, but like it's new for me.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's where I'm like I'm not, we're not reinventing, we're not making a new car, we're not doing something crazy, but we're making apparel, we make fashion.
Yeah.
We're in the fashion industry, but like it's new for me. And the one thing that I like tell everyone that I work with and that I'm like firm believer on, and this is why I learn things, is like there's no one way to do things, like do
Mm-hmm.
anything in this
Yeah.
industry. And I'm like super I like super preach that every day. There's efficient ways to do things, and there's like ways that are like proven to work and that have track records and that like you can like lean back on, and like there's formulas that work, but there's no one way to get to the end with
Yeah.
everything like in this industry. And that's how I continuously learn from the people around me, and like how we're just kind of like working through ideas and then trial and error. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I learned every day. I'm asking questions every day.
I
People
love
are,
that.
yeah,
I love that because it's such a good takeaway. Like we should be constant learners, like
yeah,
always
yeah,
learning
every
and
day.
always be curious. I think that's a lesson for me because again, back to like when I started, I think there's this like pridefulness of like wanting to know, like seem like you know what you're doing,
Yeah, no,
And like I wanted to know, seem like I knew what I was doing so bad because I'm like, yeah, I've been working in the industry. I went to school for this.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
know
no,
you don't know. Like
no,
you said,
yeah,
you're constantly learning every day. I'm still learning
every day.
every day. And there's
Yeah,
new things that come up. And that's how you grow, though, is by
for sure. Yeah,
learning and like
yeah,
learning from failures, learning from mistakes, learning
yeah,
from experience. And so, yeah, I think it's
definitely.
so important to always be learning.
100%. I would agree. I think the moment it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the moment that I stop learning would be the moment that I feel like it's a little mundane and
Yeah.
it's a little predictable and it's a little repetitive.
Mm.
And I like kind of enjoy the like aspect of like learning something and like keeping fresh and being, staying on my toes in terms of like figuring out new ways to do things. Even if it's not learning, then I'm like working through, new ways to do something, and through that way, what's the outcome? What's the difference and how we built a product and how we're going to take it from product to like production and how can we improve the process? How can we improve the communication? Like there's just so many things that you can constantly, and it's not always product related. And that's part of also like part of the excitement is like it could be like whether it's communications related or whether it's like yeah like whether you're working with a pattern team or working with a sewer again like all of those things like just kind of like bridging the gap between and working with all these departments. It doesn't always have to be necessarily directly product related, and
Yeah.
that's part of the fun thing. A lot of times it is though, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so swinging it back over to product,
Yeah,
tell me the key components to what makes a great product.
I mean, I think this is my opinion because I don't think there's one answer to this question. I'm gonna answer it in the way that I feel like it's like very not specified to like one type of product. And I
Hmm.
feel like great product for me is product that has longevity. Like that's almost what I'm gonna say, like something just and that longevity is not reflective of the price. So a lot of times the price is inclusive of the longevity, but it's not necessarily the higher the price, the longer it's going to last, right? Like that's not the
Right.
correlation between it. So when I say longevity, that doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about like a price tag or like what the garment costs or what apparel costs or what the product costs, right? But I think I that's what I instantly associate it with. And second, I associated it back towards the ingredients that, and I use this word ingredients quite a bit, but like the ingredients that came together to make it
Mm.
and those were brought because like not you don't just create a product, right? Like if you're baking a cake, like where were the like where were the eggs? Were they farmed? Are they cage free or like
Mm,
are they
hmm.
organic? Like where'd the eggs come from?
Yeah.
Like is the flour? Is it like do you use bleach flour or is it like unbleached flour? Like
Yeah.
like all of these little things that like you put into your cake to make the mix and like kind
Yeah.
of bring it together, like make the end product either in your eyes it could be different or in someone else's eyes it could make the difference in like the taste, right, and like the quality of the product.
Absolutely.
It's the same way with like to me what makes a product great is like all of those little things that go into it.
The materials, the
Yeah,
trims,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's like to me that's what makes it great, like like the inside of it. Like I
Hmm.
look at the inside, like I love the inside of like things, which is like super nerdish of me. Yeah,
Check the inside of
yeah,
their
like
garments.
it's like I look at the inside and I'm like, did like whoever like worked on this, because like again, like when you work in product development, you understand like you touch product. So like,
Hmm.
and especially when you work in denim, a lot of people touch that product before it gets to the store, before it gets to someone's, a consumer thing. So like, I look at the inside, like who, like what person, I'd like to see like, oh, like what person like looked at the inside when they were making this. Like only 2% of people are probably gonna look at the inside when they buy it. But
Yeah.
like I'm very curious about the person who opened it up to look at the inside when they made it and like thought about the inside as much as they thought about the outside. So that's like again, and that's to me, those are the things to me that make a product great. And it's kind of like just kind of treating everything like from the ingredients to the actual product to the life and how much life that product has after it's been produced. I think those are the things that make something amazing for me at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind when I asked the question about what makes a great product, all
Yeah.
I could think about was fit. Can you touch a little bit on fit and like the
Oh my
importance
gosh.
of fit
Yeah.
for a fashion product? Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes people can like skip this step, and I think it's so important, especially when you're working with retailers and you are, you know, especially in the
So
denim world. I know fit is a big thing. So yeah, if you could touch on that.
like everything I just said is like completely irrelevant if you don't have a decent fit or you
Yeah.
like don't fit or like you don't have something that yeah, if your garments don't fit, and this could be t-shirts, jackets, jeans, denim, like active wear, like if it doesn't fit the end consumer or it's uncomfortable fit,
Mm,
then it doesn't matter if you made it and the person who flicked it inside out did every single stitch by hand. Like it's all irrelevant because it's not important. Like at the end of the day, apparel, not all apparel, but most fashion is functional. So like to truly be, again, not all fashion, but most fashion is functional. And to truly be functional, it needs to fit. And it needs to fit multiple sizes, body shapes, etc. Multiple like men and women, and now we're in a like a place where like there's more gender neutral apparel, which is it's
yeah.
cool, but like there's still fit to that. There's still a fit to be
Which
gendered. Like there's
seems like it would bring a lot of challenges too to hit both.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. And there's still an aspect of like how something should fit on a human body. And I think it's one of the most important things and like to kind of like talk about it without having to talk about it because it's one of those things that is like it's part of your brand DNA, and I think it's
Yeah.
always like it's something that you carry with your brand in every brand. Like you when you buy a pair of Nike leggings, you expect those Nike leggings, to fit how your favorite pair fits every time you buy a new color. When you buy, and it's the same thing for shoes. Like when you buy a pair of shoes, you expect to be a size 9.5 or a 10 if you're a 10, you
Yeah.
know, especially if you're buying the same shoe or if you're buying from the same brand, at least you expect it to be relatively in the same world of sizing. So I think like people look at apparel and they kind of like think that that's not the case, but you would never walk into a Nike store and then ask for a size 6 when you're a size 9.5 because like
Yeah.
you think that's you're a size 6 in that and this specific shoe. No, like you go in there with an idea and the consistency that your foot didn't just magically change overnight and you're still 9.5, and you can walk into an Adidas store next door and still be a 9.5. So it's something that's like fairly consistent. And like shoes are shoes, right? But across like apparel and fashion and denim specifically, like, and you would know, like, it's very much your brand DNA, as you grow season over season, like, it's something that, customers get used to as they buy things from you.
Right.
But I think that, like, to go back and say everything that I said prior, whether it's the ingredients and the end result and the longevity, is means absolutely nothing if you have inconsistent product that your customers or your consumers or whoever is like is supporting your product and purchasing your product and is loyal to your product can't have can't come back to you and continue to be a part of your brand and a part of your
Yeah.
DNA
Because of the
season after season.
inconsistency.
Yeah, season
Yeah.
after season because of your inconsistency. And I think that like you build that over time. Like that's not something that happens right away. And a lot of brands I feel like kind of get in trouble very early on in that space. But yeah, I think it's just something that it's never gonna happen overnight.
Okay, Dom, thank you so much for your perspective. It's been so good talking to you and just hearing more about what you do in product development and just getting your insights on the importance of all these components of a brand. And so, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for none of this would be like I don't think either of us would be here if it weren't 85% for you doing what you
Aw.
did. Yeah, so no,
Honestly,
thank
and
you.
then the other, what's the other percent?
The 15.
15?
Yeah,
Yeah. The other 15% wouldn't have been possible if you never wore your K-Swisses to class. So
awesome.
thank you for your
I love that.
inspiration.
Yeah,
Um,
love that.
so if people want to get their hands on some of your work and buy some like Citizens of Humanity jeans, where or a Goldie,
Yeah.
where can they find you guys?
They can find that's a great question. Citizensofhumanity.com, agoldie.com. And yeah, and through Citizens of Humanity, you can find us at a number of retailers around the globe in Europe, North America, Canada, all over Canada, and yeah, no, all around the world. You can find Citizens of Humanity, a gold eagle sign. Yeah, go check it out. It's cool. I mean, more than the product, the people there are amazing. So I have nothing ever to like kind of like, yeah, I have nothing more to say than the product is amazing, the people are amazing, and you will have that longevity that I talked about through the product, of course, because a lot of hands touched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So you can feel good about knowing that you're going to buy a product that has an amazing team behind it that's going to
yeah,
last
yeah.
really long. And you guys make sure to turn the jeans inside out when you get a pair so we can see exactly
No,
what Dom is
no.
talking about.
Please do not at me if you see something that's a
They're
little
going to be
odd.
like, why is
No,
this overlock raw? Okay. But
can you imagine? Uh, If you guys see the overlock wrong, please send me your info.
you can send
Yeah,
any complaints directly to Dom. He's a
yeah.
little mysterious, so we don't know where to find him on the internet. But Dom, thanks so much for being here.
I'm out there. Thank you for having me. This was cool. This is very fun.
Hey, friends, before we end today's episode, I want to give you a free resource that's going to help you create that winning product that we spoke about today. And that resource is our fit checklist. And this is going to help guide you as you do your fit session so that you can ensure that your product has the best fit. You can get this free guide at makegoodfashion.com/fit check or check the show notes for the link. I promise you this is going to come in handy, so make sure to get your copy today.